Um, if you remember, in the other lesson, we had looked about how the resources, and we were seeing how to conserve natural resources we have. The resources we have, they are vital, and because they are vital, we need to conserve them. We had seen the process that we can use to conserve. For instance, if we want to conserve a valuable resource, we can increase the price. If the government increases the price of this particular resource, then we say that particular resource, people will be careful, they will not just waste its usage. And there were questions that we need to ask ourselves when we are dealing with these resources. For instance, some of the resources we can recycle. If we recycle resources, then we shall not go on to extract more resources if we are recycling. We shall try to keep that resources that is scarce for a future use. We also said public awareness is important. If people are given information on how to use a particular resource, they will use it carefully. They will use it knowing that this particular resource, we need to spend it in this manner. And if we use it anyhow, it can cost us money. So public awareness campaigns are important as far as we are concerned with conserving the natural resources. We also talked of limiting consumption. You cannot just, if you are using one room, lighting one room, there's no need for you to light other rooms while you are not in other rooms. So for you to conserve energy, then you light rooms that are only necessary, where people are. You don't just light rooms that are empty. One of the questions on tackling questions you can be asked to justify the statement, forests are renewable resources. Justify. Forests are renewable resources as far as while you are cutting some forest for timber use, you are replanting the same number that you are cutting. But if we go to the extent whereby you are cutting more timber than you are replacing by planting, then such a forest will not be a renewable resource. It will reach to a level where it is depleted because you are using more than you are planting. Also, we said, when we talk of soil, we said soil is a non-renewable resource because soil is formed from broken down particles from rocks. And wind is there, it can transport these rocks, water can transport these small particles to another place. For you to replenish, for the place to regain again, it takes millions of years and thousands of years, more than humans' lifespan. Therefore, we say soil is a non-renewable resource. You can have a question that requires you to justify the following or to classify the following into non-renewable resource or non-renewable renewable resource. For instance, what about gum trees? Gum trees. Is a gum tree a renewable resource or a non-renewable? A gum tree is a renewable resource because you can cut one, you plant another one. What about water? Is water a renewable resource or a non-renewable? Water is a renewable resource. We have the water cycle. Whether you burn that water, it will boil, change into water vapor, it will cool down, come down in the form of rain. So water is a renewable resource. What about sand? Is sand a renewable resource or non-renewable resource? We've seen that sand is a non-renewable resource. If sand is transported from one area to another, maybe through wind or water or whatever, for this same sand to go back to the place where it was transported from, it can take a million of years for it to be transported back or for whatever to happen. So what about animals like a cow? Is a cow a non-renewable resource or not? Cows are a non-renewable resource because apart from dying, they do reproduce. So one cow can give birth to another. So cows, we can term them, classify cows as a new renewable resource. And then when we talk of strategies that can be used in conserving conserving resources, we said you can limit consumption, you can increase the price so that people become careful the way they're using it, then you can use other alternative resources. If you notice that a particular resource is found is scarce, instead of you continuing to use it, if you have an alternative, then let people be given information that they can use the alternative. For instance, if we are using petrol as a fuel for petrol for our cars and so forth, we can change from petrol cars to electric cars. Electric will be an alternative source for petrol driven cars and so forth. Also, we talked of public awareness. Let people have information that, please, this is how you can use this particular resource nicely. And we talked of recycling. If you have a waste paper, maybe a plastic paper, and you want other plastic paper, instead of extracting other materials to make plastic paper or using oil to make plastic paper, you can recycle those same plastic paper to make other plastic paper. For today, we are going to look energy sources. Our topic today will be energy sources. Energy is very important as far as human life is concerned. We can have an example. Each country requires, there is a way each country will be able to have a way to get energy. It will extract energy for the functioning, for different activities that it has to conduct. For instance, a country like Australia relies very much on burning of coal. There is a coal that is available in plenty, and we find that coal generates most of the electricity that is being used in Australia. But when we say that coal is a fossil fuel, so they produce vast amounts. When you are burning this coal, they produce vast amounts of greenhouse. So when vast amount of greenhouse is produced, and remember, greenhouse is a carbon dioxide gas. This vast amount of greenhouse, if it is produced, it will go to the atmosphere. When it goes to atmosphere, the temperature will always change. The temperature, and when the temperature changes, it will affect the climate. Therefore, we are saying greenhouse gas, yes, it is there, but the greenhouse gas that is there, it is not conducive for the proper functioning of the activities within the earth. So we are saying that the production of greenhouse gas, it is a disadvantage to the environment because it will cause the ozone layer to get depleted, and therefore the dangerous rays from the sun, the ultraviolet rays, will be able to reach the earth and will harm human beings, including our skin. We can contract skin cancers and so forth. So we are saying the burning of coal will cause a lot of greenhouse, and the greenhouse will cause global warming and so forth. And that is a bit dangerous. And we are saying we need to shift from burning of coal. Depending on coal, we need to shift to renewable resources, such as wind. Wind can be relied upon, it can be harvested. We can also get our energy from solar. We can also get energy from tidal waves that are there on the seas. When the waves are there, they can be harvested, they can be harnessed. We can also get our energy from hydroelectric power. Also, we can get our energy from biomass. We can say such a kind of energies that I've mentioned, like wind power, solar power, tidal power, hydroelectric power, biomass, they are sustainable, and they are clean alternative of energy. But we know the energy we have, the energy will keep on changing depending on the demand. When the demand rises, when the demand is high, then we shall need another form of energy to be able to quell the demand, to be able to furnish, to provide enough supply for the various populations that have sprung up. But let us talk about the early human beings. How were they? Their demand on energy was a bit less. It was not high compared to the modern to the contemporary society. What we are saying, they used to have basic needs. Their energy was, there was no electricity. They relied so much on the sunlight. They were okay with the sunlight. Burning fuels, burning firewood, wood was enough for them. And they also depended on dried animal manure. We are saying early human beings, when it came to sources of energy, they depended upon wood. So when wood was burned, they depended on wood. By burning wood to provide energy for them, maybe by burning wood they locate the fire. Fire could be used to cook a number of things. That was okay for them. They also depended upon sunlight. Sunlight was there, and it's of course an important renewable source of energy to enable the plants to grow and so forth, and they could feed on those plants. And also they depended upon dry animal manure. They depended upon dried animal manure. And we say that these three sources of energy was there to meet their basic needs. Their needs of these early people was not complicated as such, but the modern times things have changed. Since then, energy demands have risen drastically, and there are reasons to explain why energy demands in the contemporary society have risen drastically. We have appliances, the contemporary man, the modern man, we have appliances, and we find that these appliances and the gadgets, such as the television sets, they require energy. The television sets that we have, the mobile phones that we have, they require energy. We have also house entertainment gadgets, that all units that require energy. We have computers. All these, they require energy, and when they are being manufactured, when we are trying to manufacture computers, the television sets, and other entertainment units within the homestead, they require a lot of energy for them to be manufactured. They also require energy when they're being used. For instance, talk of cars, they will require energy. And air travel, for you to use a plane, it requires a form of energy for you to use a plane, and so forth. So we can have a diagram trying to show the use of energy. We know over 80%, close to 80% of the world depends on the particular form of energy. But we can have a diagram showing the demand of electricity, energy, the way it has risen since 1989. We can just have a slated diagram showing the increase in demand, how the population has increased, how the lifestyle have changed, and has resulted into increased demand for electricity in a country. For instance, we can have a paragraph, we can have a diagram. We can have a diagram trying to show this relationship, that indeed it's true that the population has increased and it has affected the demand of electricity. We can have a graph showing the energy used. We can have, under the year, we can have 1990 to 2000 and 2010. We can have this one. So if you check this graph, you consider the increase in demand, you can find that as correct. From the above graph, we can discover that if we're talking about the year 1990, you can see the energy demand was about 1200. It was about 1200 petajoules. That is close to 1200 petajoules. 1 petajoule is close to 100 million joules. So you can find the demand for the power, energy, electricity power was close to 1200. Was in 1990 it was close to 1200 petajoules. But when you go to the year 2000, the 2000 is risen to 1450, close to 1,450 petajoules. And then if we go to the when you go to the year 2010, it's close to 1,700 petajoules. It has kept on changing depending on the population. It has increased. We can also have another diagram showing the energy used per person by individuals, that is in gigajoules, in various countries as stated in the World Bank. We can compare what kind of energy is needed per individual, and we compare from one country to another. We shall compare the following countries. For instance, how much is required in the United States. Maybe I can just mention this we can have a country and the yearly energy use per person, that is in terms of gigajoules. What we are going to see, we shall mention countries and the required. For instance, if we talk of United States, one individual requires 301 gigajoules. One individual requires 301 gigajoules. That's United States. When we go to United Kingdom, we shall compare countries and the level of energy that is required by individuals. So I've given, for instance, in the United States, USA, an individual requires 301 gigajoules. Gigajoules, you can have abbreviations of GJ, that's gigajoules. That's USA. When we come to a country that like United Kingdom, UK, we find that UK, an individual, a human being, one individual require 137 gigajoules, 137 gigajoules. That is in the United Kingdom. You can see the difference. In the United States is higher. The kind of energy that one person uses per year is higher than UK, depending on the conservation measures that they are trying to use. When we go to Pakistan, the country called Pakistan, Pakistan individuals, one individual requires 20 gigajoules in a year, only 20. So the level of usage is low. Then when you go to a country like Italy, Italy requires close to 119 gigajoules, 119 gigajoule. So we can say Pakistan is slightly lower than the United Kingdom. And then we go to a country like Greece, just to compare countries and the power of energy consumed per individual in a year. When you go to Greece, we find that it requires 103 gigajoules per year per individual. Then when you go to a country like Ethiopia, Ethiopia is a country found in Africa. Now we go to a country like Ethiopia. Ethiopia is using minimum only 17 gigajoules per year. That is energy level. They are using very minimal energy level per year, gigajoules per individual. When you go to a country like El Salvador, We are told a country like El Salvador uses 28 gigajoules, 28 gigajoules. Then we have a country like Egypt. Egypt is found in the continent of Africa, and Egypt also, they don't use a lot of energy per individual. In a year, an individual requires 78 gigajoules in a year. That is in Egypt. Then we can go to a country like China. China, one of the countries with the large population in the world. We are told that China has the largest population in the world. It's more than 1 billion human beings there. Then China uses close to 76, the other one was 78. Egypt is not 78. Pardon, Egypt is 38. Egypt is 38. So they are controlling the usage. Then when you go to China, China is 76. They've tried to use power appropriately. When we go to Canada, we have a country called Canada. We can have it here. Canada is using Canada is using 310 gigajoules in a year, individuals there. Then we can have an example of a country called Australia. Then we can compare it with the other nations out there. Australia, for instance, Australia is using close to 235 gigajoules, 235 gigajoules per year, that's per individuals. So we can see how energy is spread, that in different countries, depending on the energy they have, human beings will tend to use energy differently depending on the mechanism that has been placed, that are in place for the use of power. How are people informed in terms of power? What information do they have? And what mechanism and what form of energy particularly is in that country? And that's why we end up having these countries using different powers and so forth. So when we minimize the usage of power, it can be stored to be used at a later day. Now, we want to talk of non-renewable energy resources. Non-renewable energy resources. And this implies that, yes, we have energy resources, is true, but when these energy resources are used, then they cannot be renewed. They cannot be renewed. So it means that the way we use the non-renewable resources, we need to use them properly and diligently. So some of these non-renewable energy resources, we shall mention them here so that we know them. Non-renewable energy resources. So the non-renewable energy resources, we have oil. We have oil, coal. Yes, we have oil. We have our normal coal. We also have gas. It is a non-renewable energy resource, gas. And also we have nuclear energy. We have nuclear. Nuclear energy is very powerful depending on the fusion of some of the some of the elements within it. Yes, you fuse, it will bring under fusion, it will bring up. It is very powerful, but it is also non-renewable. So we are saying that energy sources that cannot be replaced, such as these, are called non-renewable energy resources. We are saying once you extract these oil, coal, and gas, once they are used, they cannot be renewed again. They end, they run out, and then that's the end of it. So such a kind of resources, we call them, they are non-renewable sources of energy. They are non-renewable energy sources. Oil, coal, gas, and their products And when we talk of their products, these products are such as petrol, diesel, are all known as fossil fuels. We are saying all of them are oil, coal, gas, all these, and their petroleum products, that is petrol, we know of petrol and diesel. We are saying all these are called fossil fuels. They are called fossil fuels, and we are saying they are non-renewable. When we are talking about fossil fuels, we say that close to 300 million years ago, the dead remains of prehistoric animals. There were animals that died close to 300 million years ago, plus plants that died. They were covered by mud. Layers of mud came and covered them, and under some form of pressure, there was a pressure that came and applied on this, then we ended up having these oils and so forth. So we are saying that the pressure and the heat below the Earth's surface gradually transformed. They transformed these remains into different fossil fuels that we found today. So the oil that we're enjoying today, we should know that this oil that we're enjoying today were plants and living organisms, whether they were human beings or animals, that died long time ago. And before they died, they had extracted some form of energy from the sunlight. This form of energy that was extracted from the sunlight is the same energy that we are going to get when we get the oil and we burn oil, we burn the petrol. It will release this form of energy. As it releases this form of energy from petrol and so forth, at the same time we are also getting the carbon dioxide gas is also being released in large amount, which requires that this gas that is being produced in large amount need to be controlled. When we talk of coal, when you are burning coal so as to get electricity, you will gain electricity by burning coal is okay. But remember, when you're burning coal, you are also producing what we call greenhouse gas. And that greenhouse gas has got adverse effect on the atmosphere. If it warms up the atmosphere, then the climate can change. It can change either positively, it can change negatively. Mostly the greenhouse gas causes negative change. There is an adverse change in the climate, and if it affects that way, it's dangerous. So there should be a limitation on the amount of the greenhouse gas that we are trying to emit to the atmosphere, because if we do so, it will change the climate and living organisms will be in danger. So we are saying, and when we talk of, so we have said when you are burning oil or coal and gas, there is a production of carbon dioxide that will be emitted in the atmosphere, and there will be that change. The climate will change, the atmosphere will warm up, and it will affect the climate. Now, when we talk of nuclear, what about nuclear fuels? We have talked of fossil fuels. What about nuclear fuels? Now, when we talk of nuclear fuels, here we concentrate on two important elements called uranium and plutonium. We concentrate on this uranium and plutonium. They are also non-renewable sources of energy, and that once they are used, then they have power. Many countries are using nuclear power to get electricity and so forth. But we are saying for you to get the power from nuclear plants and so forth, it depends. Setting up of these power plants, nuclear power plants, is expensive and requires scientists who know what they are doing so that they can conduct this nuclear fusion in the correct manner. So, but countries are there which will only want to get radioisotopes for use in the production of medicine, the medicine production and in the engineering, and not in terms of war, because nuclear fusion, if it is left, it becomes dangerous. They can use nuclear in the production of bombs, like atomic bombs, which can be dangerous if you decide to drop atomic bomb to a nation or to countries, it can kill a number of people. So we are saying small amounts of these nuclear fuels may produce large amounts of energy in a chain reactions. It can produce large amount of energy in chain reaction in a process called nuclear fission. We have a process called nuclear fission. And in the nuclear fissions, you will find that the elements and the atom will react and they will be controlled the way they are going to fission. And when the nuclear fission, it will produce a lot of energy. That a lot of energy, when it's controlled, it has to be controlled well under the nuclear power plant. The heat that is created is used to generate electricity, which can be supplied and be used within the country. Nuclear power plants do not produce greenhouse gas. Nuclear power plant, they do not produce greenhouse gas that is dangerous to the atmosphere, but we have nuclear wastes that are dangerous. So the problem with the nuclear wastes, because they are radioactive, it becomes, where are you going to store the nuclear wastes? Yes, you have acquired the due reaction, you have acquired your energy, you have acquired your electricity, but the way you store these nuclear wastes becomes a problem. Are you going to store them under the sea, beddings, whatever? You find that the nuclear waste, because they are radioactive, they can be able to stay and to be present for a number of many years, whereby it becomes dangerous. We know how the radioactivity is dangerous to the lives of human beings. So it requires good disposal of the government. The problem of storing this nuclear waste is becoming a danger. So we're saying nuclear power plant do not produce greenhouse emissions. However, nuclear fission produces waste that remain radioactive for thousands of years. Long-term safe storage for these wastes remain a problem. It's a danger. For how are you going to store this waste? Over 80% of world's energy supply is obtained from oil, where we have written oil, is obtained from coal, is obtained from gas, over 80% of power. And maybe when you come to a country like Australia, Australia has got a plentiful supply of coal and it's relatively cheap. Major energy sources used in Australia, we can mention, they include one, black and brown coal for production of steam to generate electricity. Maybe we can mention the major sources of power that is dependent upon in Australia. We have mentioned the first one as being black and brown coal. Black and brown coal. So we had said, yes, you will use this black and brown coal, but the danger that is there is large amount of greenhouse deposited in the atmosphere, which can be affect climate. So we say, yes, we are using it, but it should change so that we adopt the new renewable resources that are friendly to the atmosphere. So we say black and brown coal is used to produce steam that is used to generate electricity and so forth is okay. Then you have petrol power. So we find that another source of power is the petrol, and petrol is used to power cars. Most cars use petrol for their movement, and also some energy is used. LPG, liquefied petroleum gas. There are some cars that use liquefied petroleum gas that is also extracted from wood. That's the way you get oil. That is true, we have them. It is also a fossil fuel, that is liquefied petroleum gas is a fossil fuel. We have cars that use this liquefied petroleum gas. Another source of power, we have diesel. And when we talk of diesel power, most large trucks, cars, and tractors use this, and even some trains. So we say diesel there, it can be used for large cars, trucks. Yes, truck will use this, and tractors are here. Yes, tractors will use diesel. And tractors will be used mostly for plowing farms and so forth. So these tractors will use this diesel as a power that will be depended upon. And then we have natural gas for cooking. Then another power that, another source of power, which is a renewable resource, of course. We have natural gas for cooking. Natural gas for cooking. So natural gas for cooking is there. It can be extracted naturally, but we know that this natural gas also will be depleted. It's a non-renewable resource. We can have a format of how generally in the world, we want to see generally how in the world energy, how is energy supplied and how is it obtained from oil, coal, and gas. We can have a table trying, a table of 3 bars trying to illustrate how the major sources of energy in the world and what will happen if these sources of energy get depleted. So we can have the following these are just bars they will try to illustrate. Three bars are enough to illustrate these sources of power. From the first, oil is one of the sources of power, and when we look oil, the country depends, the world depends upon it. That's the 7%. That's 7%. That 7% it is oil, and then coal is 25%. Then from 25% we have coal as 25%, and then gas is also 25%. Then the remaining, those small bars will be showing then from the first bar, we shall try to explain this because they're too minute. We can expand them. We can have here the nuclear power. And nuclear power here is 6%. Yeah, it can be observed from nuclear power. We have biogas. And the biogas is 6% also. Then from biogas, we're only trying to amplify this. Then this one, we're amplifying it so that it's seen well. Then from biogas, we have hydrogas, hydropower. Yes, under hydropower, this close to 6%. Then the remaining tiny 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. We can expound them further into solar heat, which is 0.5. Solar heat, 0.5%. Then from solar heat, we have wind. And on wind, we are getting 0.3%. Then from wind, we have geothermal. Then from geothermal power, we have 0.27%. Then from geothermal, we have biofuel. Then from biofuel is close to 0.2%. Then from biofuel, we have solar. And the solar is photovoltaics. Photovoltaic is voltaic. And photovoltaic is 0.04. Then this is just an expansion from this. We get them here. It's expansion to know the details within. Now, when we look, these three bars that are showing the use of energy resources in the world, and we are seeing oil is used in the 7% of the world power depends on the oil. 25% of power in the world is coal, and then gas is giving close to 25%. Nuclear contributes only 6% of power in the entire world. Then there's biogas, which is 6%. Hydropower is 6%. So we can say the above charts show where the world's energy comes from. The second and the third rows, they show the details that cannot be seen in the smallest bands of row above. They might be too tiny, we cannot be able to write there. So we have seen that the world entirely depends so much on these non-renewable resources. There is a need to change the world dependence on these non-renewable resources to renewable resources. And renewable resources, they have also their own limitations that we are going to observe. Yes, we are trying to change the world from depending upon these non-renewable resources. We want the world now to change their focus from non-renewable resources to renewable resources. However, the renewable resources, they have their own challenges, as we are going to see in few minutes coming. So we can put our concentration on renewable energy sources. So when we talk of renewable energy sources, what are we saying? We are saying renewable energy sources can be used over and over. There's no way renewable energy sources can get depleted. There's no way renewable energy sources can run out. No, they can be used over and over. If we want to build an energy supply for future and to limit greenhouse gas emissions, then we need to switch from the fossil fuel to renewable sources. We are saying that on renewable energy sources, we need to shift our dependence on non-renewable energy sources to renewable energy sources. And we are saying when we shift this, it will limit the production and the emission of greenhouse to the atmosphere. And when we do this, we need to switch from fossil fuels to renewable resources. Key resources of energy. What are these key sources of renewable energy? key sources of renewable energy that we can think of, one is water, not just water, but moving water. So from moving water, it can be moving water, maybe in a river, maybe and so forth, so that from this moving water, energy can be trapped from moving water so that we get electricity maybe through the hydropower we have learned. They will go to a river and ensure that they collect this moving river so that it can be trapped. Then we harness our electric power. So moving water can be a source of renewable energy. And then another source of renewable energy is the sun. So in areas or in countries where there is plenty of sunshine, where the sun will be there, where the sun will rise and shine. The point here, that sun has to shine, not clouds should not be there for interference. So we are saying where the energy will come up well from the sun, then from the sun we can trap energy. We can have the solar panels, the panels that can be able to try to trap solar, to trap energy from the sun and so forth. So we can say sun is another source of renewable energy. We can be able to trap energy from the sun and so forth so that we use it. Whether the sun has set is not there, but the energy that has been stored, that has been trapped maybe using the solar panels and others, we can trap energy that way. Another source of energy that can be trapped here is we do have wind power. So from great turbines of wind, where there is wind, we say it is moving air. Depending on the speed of wind that is moving, they can construct turbines that are able to rotate depending on this wind. And when they move as they rotate, they can be able to produce energy, whether in the form of electric energy and so forth. So we can harness energy from the wind. But one important idea on this wind energy, the turbines should be placed in a place where there is wind, where seasonally there is a research and has shown that this particular country, there is wind moving from one area to another. Because if there's no wind, because at times it will be cool and calm and there's no wind. So it will be difficult for you to harness energy from wind if the wind is not there. It will be difficult. So it has to be placed, the turbines have to be placed in an area where they can be able to where there's enough supply of wind so that they can get energy from there. Another source, a fourth source of energy, we have heat within the earth. We can have heat within the earth, and when we're talking about heat within the earth, maybe we have hot springs, geysers, and so forth. So heat within the earth. When we talk about heat within the earth, then we can be able to trap this. If the heat within the earth is coming up in terms of steams and so forth, through the geothermal power, they can be able to trap this heat that is coming up from the earth crust, from the inner core of the earth. It can be trapped to come up with the gas, to come up with the emissions of heat and steam and so forth, and we can get our heat, our electricity from this heat within the earth, as long as it is there. It's not a matter of volcanicity and so forth. So heat within the earth can be another source of renewable energy as long as the heat is coming from the earth. And we know within the earth crust, in the center there, it is very hot. So if we continue receiving heat from within the earth, we can trap that energy. And also we can get another source of heat. We can have oceans. Now, when we talk of oceans as a source of energy, maybe here we are talking about tidal waves, tidal waves, the waves, tidal waves. For us to have energy from oceans, there must be waves. So for waves to be there, there should be wind that will blow so that enough waves are well formed so that from these waves and then we can harness the energy that we want. So oceans, for us to get energy from oceans, there should be tidal waves, and these tidal waves, the waves should be there, so from the waves then we can be able to harness. There's no way you can get energy from the oceans if there are no waves. Wind should be there to ensure that there are waves, so that from these waves then we can collect our energy. And as long as the waves are there, energy is always will be trapped. We can also have another source of energy, maybe from rivers. Rivers, there's moving water and rivers is okay. Rivers, depending, we have rivers that will flow at a higher speed from a higher level to a lower level and so forth. From rivers, you can construct hydroelectric dams, and from hydroelectric dams, we can be able to harness energy from these rivers. Another source of energy, we can talk of we can talk of biomass. And when we talk of biomass, this scientific way, there's a way you can come up with a biomass, and the biomass is another form of energy. You can get a gas from biomass, and it can be used in cooking, many things within the household and so forth. But this is an energy. However, as I had mentioned earlier, apart from this being renewable source of energy, that with the technology we can be able to make them more effective and efficient to be depended upon. But we are saying that the major problem with these renewable energy sources is that the energy output is not continuous. The energy output is not continuous. For instance, if we talk of the sun, then we have to be realistic that sun will not shine 24 hours. It will shine during daytime, and at night there will be no sun. So we can say, yes, sun was shining, but the energy that we are getting from the sun is not continuous. Then the other issue, because we have realized that now the energy from the sun is not continuous, then we need to come up with a proper storage mechanism. And we are saying with the proper storage mechanism is that, do we have correct storage mechanism so that when there is enough sunshine that is shining within the daytime, we can be able to trap that energy from the sun during that time, daytime, so that at night that energy can be used even when the sun is not there. So coming up with the proper mechanism on terms of storage, the way we can be able to trap this sunlight that is not continuous throughout. At night the sun is not there. So that we can trap this energy during the daytime, and then when it reaches the night, we can be able to use that solar energy properly. So we are saying, when we talk of the sun, we need to have a proper mechanism so that we can be able to store the sunlight as a power, renewable source of power, so that we can use, because that power is not continuous. Now, when we come to wind, wind is moving air. If air is not moving, then it's not wind. But if it's moving, then it is wind. So what we rely upon for us to get our energy, that air must be moving, whether it's from low altitude to low altitude, wind should be there. But this moving wind is not there permanently. There's a time there will be wind that is moving, then there's a time it will be air, it will stop. So we are saying, can we have gadgets that are able to trap this wind that is moving? That this wind is moving, that during the time it is moving, we can be able to trap that energy from the wind. We trap it so that when it stops, we still have power that we have trapped from the turbines. We place our turbines at specific places, correct places, where the wind will move, it will trap that power from it, and there should be a storage, a place where we can storage that power that we have harnessed from the wind, moving air. So if there is a way we can be able to trap the power from wind so that by the time it's not moving, then we still have that power, it is okay. Why? Because we are saying wind is not continuous. It cannot be there. It can never be there permanently. There's a time wind will be there and it will stop. So we are saying during this time that it has stopped, do we have ability? Do we have some gadgets that are effective and efficient that can be able to store this wind so that during the time it is not moving, the snow wind is not blowing, we will have harnessed the energy that we want. Then when we are talking about biomass, biomass depends on animal. How far have you collected the excretes from the animals and so forth? Do you have enough animals for you to formulate your biomass? So this one depends on the scientific methods that will come up so that you have enough biomass, because biomass, it can be a bit, if you come up with a more effective and efficient way of managing biomass, is okay. But we know that biomass, it will depend upon the living organism, the animals, and the storage part of it so that you can have enough power. We had already mentioned when we talk of heat within the earth, we have said heat that is coming from within the earth, whether the hot geysers and so forth, the geothermal power that we are going to get. But how far will you depend upon that? There are countries whereby volcanic activities are not there. How will you be able to get the heat from the earth? It's not a matter of you will say, I'm going to drill so that I get this heat. No. It really depends on the natural geysers that are there, the hot springs that can be present within a particular country. So if there is a country that is endowed, with enough geysers, enough hot springs, we shall say, fine. We can use those hot springs so that we can get our energy. Then when you're getting our energy from these hot springs and so forth, do we have a proper mechanism of storage so that this heat can be used properly? On the oceans, tidal waves, you have said yes, waves are there. We must have wind so that that wind can cause waves. When it causes waves, then we should have proper storage mechanism. When we have proper storage mechanism, we should say yes. We have proper storage mechanism, then we can be able to store our energy and use it appropriately when the time demands. Now, because we have seen some of these, we have seen how we have seen that the major problem with the renewable resource, we have seen that the energy we gain from renewable resource is there, the output is there, but it is not continuous. It is not continuous. You've said that the major disadvantage with the renewable resource is there, but it is not continuous. So we should come up with a mechanism so that during the time we are trying to harvest our energy from these renewable resources, let us store it properly. Let us have effective and efficient mechanism gadgets to store these renewable resources because it is not continuous. Two, we need to diversify, to have many renewable resources so that we feel we have to ask ourselves under what, because there are countries whereby you will find maybe building turbines to harness wind energy will be a disadvantage. But if they are located in tropicals where there is more wind, then it's okay. There are countries where the sun, as long as it's shining, will get light. But there are places where the sunshine will not be enough. So for you to depend upon sunshine as a source of energy will be a disadvantage. Then we are also saying there are places which are not endowed with volcanic activity. There are no hot springs and geysers. So for you to say now you are going to harvest water through the heat within the earth, it is difficult. So the major disadvantage with this renewable resource, we have said it is not continuous. So we are saying better methods need to be developed to store renewable energy when demand is slow so that it can be used later when the demand rises and so forth. So as we come to the end of this lesson, we shall continue with our next topic, and it will be on hydroelectricity. Hydroelectricity, how we can get electricity from water. And that becomes the end of our lesson and the lesson today. Thank you.